Assalamu alaikum. Today we are going to discuss the rectus sheath and the linea alba, which are present in the anterior lateral abdominal wall. So as we have discussed in the previous lecture, that the rectus sheath, it was formed by the aponeurosis of the flat muscles. Okay, so first of all we will write that here, rectus sheath. This rectus sheath, it was formed by the aponeurosis of the three flat muscles of the abdomen. And those three flat muscles were the external oblique muscle, the internal oblique muscle, and the transversus abdominis muscle. The aponeurosis of these three muscles was combining on the midline of the anterior lateral abdominal wall to form this rectus sheath. Okay, and this rectus sheath, it will be present between the mid-clavicular lines. Present between mid-clavicular lines. These are its dimensions from the both sides of the body. It will present between the mid-clavicular lines of both sides of the body. Okay, and this rectus sheath, it actually has three parts. Okay, we will see those three parts here in the detail. So the first part, it is the anterior wall. Anterior wall of the rectus sheath. So this anterior wall, it is formed by two muscles. Okay, the one will be external oblique muscle, and the second one is the anterior lamina of the internal oblique muscle. Anterior lamina of internal oblique. And what is the anterior lamina? It means the anterior layer, because the internal oblique muscle, it will divide into two lamina, so the two layers. One will be the anterior lamina and the other one will be posterior lamina, which will move anterior and the posterior to the rectus abdominis muscle. Okay, so this is the anterior layer of this muscle, which will participate in the to form the anterior wall of the abdomen. Okay, then next, the second one, it is the upper posterior wall. Upper posterior wall. So this upper posterior wall, it is formed by the posterior lamina of the internal oblique. Posterior lamina of this muscle, internal oblique muscle, and also it will be formed by the transversus abdominis muscle. Okay, so these two muscles will combine to form the upper posterior wall. So next one, it will be the lower posterior wall. Lower posterior wall, and this lower posterior wall, it will be formed by the transversalis fascia. By the transversalis fascia. And we have seen in the lecture of the fascia that this transversalis fascia, it was derived from the endo-abdominal fascia when it was covering the transversus abdominis muscle. So it will form the transversalis fascia. Now the upper and the lower posterior wall, these both, they will be separated by an arcuate line. Separated by arcuate line. Okay, and the upper posterior wall, it will consist of the upper three quadrants of the rectus sheath. Mainly it will cover it. Upper three quadrants. And this lower posterior wall, it will cover the lower one quadrant, meaning it is present, it will cover lesser area. Okay, so now here we have seen the three parts of this rectus sheath, and now we will move towards the contents of the rectus sheath. Contents means the structure which are present beneath it or posterior to it, okay, or inside it, okay. So these contents, they will include the rectus abdominis muscle. As its name indicate, it will present behind the rectus sheath, rectus abdominis muscle. Then it will be formed by the pyramidalis muscle. Then by the superior and the inferior epigastric vessels. Superior as inferior epigastric vessels. And it will also contains the distal part of the thoraco-abdominal nerves. These thoracoabdominal nerve, they will be T7 to T12. We will see these in detail in the lecture of the nerves, okay. So these are the contents of this rectus sheath. Now we will move to our next topic, that was the linea alba. In last, we will see this rectus sheath and linea alba in the form of a diagram also for better understanding. But first of all, we will discuss this linea alba. So this linea alba, it separates the bilateral rectus sheath, means it will separate the rectus sheath of the both sides. Separate bilateral rectus sheaths, okay. This is its function, we can say. And its dimensions will be that it will extend from the xiphoid process of the sternum to the pubic symphysis of the hip bone. Extend from xiphoid process to pubic symphysis. These are its dimensions. And it will transmit the small nerves and vessels to the skin. It's also its function. And it will contain an umbilical ring which will present underlying the umbilicus. Contains umbilical ring underlying umbilicus. As it will be present in the center, so it will cross the umbilicus, and deep to umbilicus there will be an umbilical ring present. What is actually this umbilical ring? It is actually a defect in the linea alba. Umbilical ring is a defect in linea alba, through which the fetal umbilical vessels pass to and from the umbilical cord and the placenta. Through which fetal vessel pass. Okay. And all the layers of the anterior lateral abdominal wall will fuse at the umbilicus. That is a very important point. You must remember that all layers of anterior lateral abdominal wall fuse at umbilicus. So this was our lecture regarding the linea alba and the rectus abdominis. Now we will see in the form of a short diagram. Here I will draw it here like this. Now let's suppose these are the three muscles, okay, 1, 2 and 3 of the right side. The flat three muscles which are participating from the rectus sheath, okay, and these are the three muscles from the left side, okay. Now they will form an aponeurosis, these three and these three. This is the rectus sheath of the right side, this is the rectus sheath of the left side, okay, and between these this area, this will be the linea alba. So now I hope it will be clear to you. This was rectus sheath, and this was the linea alba. Rectus sheath was formed by the aponeurosis of these three flat muscles on both sides, and on the center there was the linea alba, and here will be the umbilicus, and posterior to umbilicus there will be the umbilical ring, which is a defect in the linea alba through which the fetal vessels will pass to and from the umbilical cord and the placenta. Thank you.